Augmented by Default podcast. I am really excited about this one.
Oh, yeah, me too. We're diving into something huge today, touching on tech, the economy, and, well, how we all feel about where things are headed.
It's based on some fascinating material. We've been digging into a particular book, some articles all pointing to, AI and LLMs really reshaping the near future, but maybe in ways our current systems are kind of fighting against.
That's exactly it. The core thread here is that technology, especially AI, is this incredibly powerful force for deflation and abundance. Makes these cheaper, better, faster.
Right.
But our economic systems, particularly how we handle money and debt, seem to be pushing in the complete opposite direction.
And this clash, the sort of tug of war between these huge forces, is causing a lot of the weirdness and the challenges we're all seeing, I think, even if we don't always connect the dots.
Definitely. So our mission today is really to unpack that. We want to understand how AI is argued to create this deflationary pressure, explore what that actually means for industries, for the economy as a whole, and then grapple with the really big idea of what happens if we actually get this technological abundance.
Yeah, big questions. Like, if tech is making everything potentially cheaper to produce, why does stuff feel more expensive? Why does life cost more?
Exactly. And what about jobs?
Yeah.
If technology gets really good at optimizing things, eliminating waste, what does that mean for work as we know it?
Okay, let's jump in. The starting point in the material is this idea that technology is naturally deflationary.
Yeah, that's the fundamental claim.
So what does that mean, practically speaking, like in the real world?
Well, think about it historically. For almost all of human history, economies were about scarcity, right? Things were hard to make, took lots of effort, lots of resources.
Sure. Communication was slow, processes were manual, friction everywhere.
Precisely. And technology, really since the first tools, has been about reducing that friction, reducing the inputs, the labor, the resources, the time needed to get a certain output.
Like Moore's law with computing costs, or how cheap information is now compared to, say, 30 years ago. It's often exponential reduction.
Exactly. And the argument we're exploring is that AI just pours gasoline on that fire. It takes this exponential trend and kicks it into overdrive.
How so?
Well, AI can spot inefficiencies humans would never see. It can automate really complex thinking tasks, process data at scales we can't even imagine. All of this dramatically cuts the real cost of producing goods and delivering services.
Okay, so if a company uses AI, I don't know, to streamline its logistics or handle customer queries,
Yeah.
they can operate more cheaply, and then you'd think competition would force prices down for everyone.
That's the theory, right?
Yeah.
In a sort of pure technologically driven market, without other forces messing with it, you should see deflation. Your money should buy more over time. The material suggests that if that's not happening, it's not because the technology isn't working. It's because something else is pushing back hard against that natural deflationary trend.
Okay, which brings us to the big counterforce discussed in the book and articles. Basically, money printing, the massive injection of capital.
Yeah, this is where the real tension snaps into focus. You got technology pushing prices down, making things abundant.
The deflationary force.
And then you've got governments, central banks, creating trillions in new money and credit, pouring it into the system.
Right. It was described in one place like trying to fill a leaky bathtub. The leak is technology making things cheaper while also having the faucets blasting full bore with new money.
That's a great analogy. Hey, the water level, which is like the actual purchasing power for everyday stuff, doesn't rise as much as you'd expect from all that water coming in.
So where does the pressure go? Where does all that new money end up?
The argument is it flows into assets, things that are scarce or perceived to be scarce. Real estate, stocks, maybe even things like Bitcoin sometimes.
Why there specifically?
Because if you have this new money or easy access to cheap debt, you need to put it somewhere. It won't just evaporate, right? Scarce assets become a kind of refuge, a store of value, when the currency itself might be losing ground.
So loads of capital chases a relatively fixed supply of houses or shares.
And boom, prices go up. But crucially, the price increase isn't necessarily because the house is suddenly much better or the company is massively more productive. It's what the material calls a monetary premium, more money chasing the same stuff.
So someone's house value on paper might soar or their stocks look great.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an illusion, or at least not tied directly to real economic growth in the old-fashioned sense. It's more about where the fire hose of new money is pointed.
And critically, this doesn't make life cheaper for most people day to day, while asset owners feel richer on paper.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of, groceries, energy, rent, healthcare, that stuff often stays high or keeps climbing.
That's the paradox, isn't it? That gut feeling so many people have. We live in this age of amazing tech. Things should be getting cheaper, easier.
Right. But it feels like you're running faster and faster just to stay in the same place, especially if you don't own those assets that are inflating.
It's a huge disconnect. Technology is creating the potential for lower costs, for abundance, but the monetary system is working against it, creating this weird split: asset inflation for some, rising living costs for many.
And that feeling you mentioned, that the money you worked hard to save just doesn't stretch as far anymore. That resonates, I think, with almost everyone listening.
Yeah, it feels like the goalposts keep moving.
Especially for younger people, maybe. The idea of saving up, buying a home, the traditional markers of security feel so much harder to reach now, despite all this tech.
Absolutely. The material touches on that sense of anxiety, even despair it can create.
But understanding this why, this clash between tech deflation and systemic inflation, it doesn't make it less challenging, but it does make it make more sense.
Exactly. It explains that nagging feeling that the economy isn't quite working the way it maybe should be, given the tools we have. It's not just a feeling. There are specific dynamics at play. Okay, let's shift slightly. Another huge consequence explored in the material is the future of work itself. If AI gets really good at making things efficient, cutting out waste, what happens to jobs?
Well, one of the really provocative ideas is that actually a lot of jobs today exist because of inefficiency.
What do you mean? Like jobs fixing mistakes or shuffling papers or navigating complicated systems that shouldn't be that complicated?
Precisely. Jobs dealing with information gaps, bureaucratic hurdles, manual coordination, tasks that exist only because things aren't perfectly optimized or information isn't instantly available everywhere it's needed.
Okay.
So if AI can suddenly see everything, process everything, connect everything instantly, if it can automate away errors and optimize complex flows, it basically eats up that waste.
And if the waste disappears?
Then the argument is the jobs built around managing that waste might disappear too, or at least change dramatically.
Wow. That's a big thought. Because we've built our whole society around the idea of having a job, earning an income, right? It's how we survive, how we find identity.
And this is where the flip side comes in the idea of abundance. If technology drives the cost of necessities way, way down, towards almost zero,
Right.
and if it handles all that inefficiency, then the fundamental problem changes. It's not about scarcity anymore. It becomes about distribution and about purpose. What do we do?
Yeah, the question shifts from how do we make sure everyone has a job to something more like how do we organize society and find meaning if a traditional job isn't the main thing anymore?
It forces a complete rethink. The material argues that trying to desperately preserve jobs just for the sake of income actually prevents us from fully benefiting from the abundance technology could offer.
But is this tech unemployment just a disaster waiting to happen? Or is there another way to look at it?
Well, the interesting angle presented is maybe not if we let the deflation happen.
Meaning?
If technology makes everything incredibly cheap, housing, food, energy, healthcare, then maybe losing a traditional job doesn't mean destitution. Maybe your basic needs are met because the cost of living has collapsed.
So you wouldn't necessarily need massive government handouts in the way we think of them now.
Potentially not. It would be more about ensuring everyone benefits from the system's overall efficiency gains, rather than artificially propping up costs and jobs.
The picture painted is, well, it's kind of radical. Embracing the deflation could free people from needing to work just to survive. It could open up space for other things.
Yeah, creative work, learning, exploration, community building, caring for each other. What one source called human-centric flourishing.
Activities driven by passion or curiosity, not just the need for a paycheck.
People would still work, surely, but maybe not in the 9 to 5. Got to pay the bill sense for everyone. Think artists, scientists, volunteers, mentors.
It really feels like we're at this pivot point, stuck between the old world of scarcity and jobs for income and this potential new world of abundance and maybe purpose-driven lives.
And the friction, the messy part we're in now, is that transition, fighting against the technological tide with old economic tools.
The argument being that we need to figure out how to surf that technological wave of deflation rather than trying to build dams against it with inflation.
It requires a conscious shift in thinking, adapting to these incredibly powerful forces.
And this whole framework, tech deflation versus systemic inflation, the impact on assets, the future of work, it all comes back to that core observation. Technology is pushing one way, and our current system is pushing back.
It's a dynamic that is absolutely shaping our reality right now. Understanding it is, I think, crucial for navigating what's coming.
So let's bring this back to you listening. You've probably felt that pinch, right? Seeing prices go up, feeling like your savings just don't buy what they used to. Maybe you're worried about the future, about financial stability for yourself, for your kids. It can feel pretty unsettling, like the ground is shifting.
And knowing about these forces, this tech deflation being fought by money creation, it doesn't magically solve those problems, but it gives you a lens. It helps make sense of why things feel this way.
Because, yeah, the current situation creates real issues, asset bubbles, inequality, cost of living pressures. But the underlying technological push, that's actually towards something potentially amazing, abundance, freedom from basic scarcity.
And this isn't just abstract theory. It's directly connected to the AI developments we talk about all the time on Augmented by Default. The AI agents, the LLMs, they are the engines driving this efficiency.
Right. They're not just cool tech demos. They're already being used. You know, think about AI assisting doctors with diagnoses, scanning patient data way faster than any human could, catching things earlier.
Huge potential cost savings and better outcomes there.
Or in finance, AI spotting complex fraud patterns, assessing risk more accurately. That cuts down on waste and loss in the system.
These are real-world examples of technology doing exactly what the material describes, tackling inefficiency, reducing friction, driving that deflationary pressure.
It's powerful seeing the connection between these big economic ideas and the actual AI tools being built and deployed now.
And speaking of AI agents, that leads us perfectly into our next deep dive. We're incredibly excited because we'll be joined by Domenico and Michael from the Augmented 4.
Yes, we're huge admirers of their work. We're going to be talking specifically about augmentative AI agents and digital personas, really getting into the nitty-gritty of how these things work and what they can do.
It follows so naturally from today's discussion, looking at the actual building blocks of this augmented future. Honestly, you do not want to miss that conversation.
Absolutely. So as we wrap this one up, thinking about tech, inflation, abundance, here's the final thought, the one that the material really leaves you chewing on. If technology keeps accelerating, if it makes many traditional jobs kind of unnecessary because it handles the waste and makes abundance possible, how do we actually rebuild things? How do we structure society? How do we find meaning, stay peaceful if earning a living isn't the central driving force for everyone anymore?
It's probably the biggest question facing us, really. And AI is forcing us to ask it much sooner than maybe we expected.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive on Augmented by Default.
We really hope unpacking some of these ideas helps you make sense of the whirlwind that is our current moment.
We will catch you next time for that chat with Domenico and Michael.